Welcome to the ADOS Townhall. The program will be starting soon. Welcome to the ADOS Town Hall. The program will be starting soon. Welcome to the ADOS Town Hall. The program will be starting soon. to the ADOS Town Hall. The program will be starting soon. The American Descendants of Slavery Advocacy Foundation welcomes you to the Town Hall, our movement's venue for information and feedback as we push toward reparations and a transformative Black agenda.
Hey family, thank you once again for joining us for the second ADOS Town Hall. Now, I want to just brief you really quickly on why we're having a second Town Hall, because we didn't initially intend on doing that. We wanted to have the first and answer some questions and then kind of move on to the work of building a movement that we've been building, right? But something happened. We always want to listen to you and what you say and your input. And you told us, some of you did, some of you who are new to this, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. I feel like I came into a novel in the middle. I feel like I got here and everything was already happening. I feel like you dropped me in the middle of a novel. And we said, listen, we have to give everybody the backstory. We have to give everybody the context. We have to give everybody the origin story of how this happened. How did this movement come to be? Who are the contributors? And what do we plan on doing as we move forward? Right? We have to do that. But before we get to that, and we're going to do that, we have to have a little Q&A because this is a town hall. So a Q&A from you all. Hey fam, how everybody doing?
Good evening.
Hello.
How you guys doing? Hey.
I know everybody got some questions, so I want to hear some questions from our ADOS community about what they want to talk about so we can answer those and be transparent. Because one of the things that we want to do is be unlike all the other organizations that are not, in the face of the people and answering their questions. So let's get to it.
Okay, so the first question comes from Twitter, and it reads, how do you change the minds of people who think reparations are impossible?
Well, I think one of the things that we did already to kind of change the minds, because when we get into the origin story, we're going to get into how we change those minds. But one of the things we do is to create the knowledge base, right? That this is urgent. This isn't something that you can say, well, maybe I can, maybe I won't, maybe I will, maybe I won't. No. You're falling over a cliff. And we know it's not just, well, some Black people got some money. No, that's not where we are. We're at a place where we're going over a cliff. It was supposed to be in like 2053, zero wealth, right? Or negative wealth. And now COVID has driven us past that. So I think what you have to do to other people, to other ADOS people, is hold up a mirror to their face, right? And say, this is your life. You don't have enough. You don't have enough for your life. You certainly don't have enough for the life of your kids. You don't have enough to be American. And what they've done with wealth is strip us of our Americanness. And we have to take that back. And so I think you have to let them know that this is not something that you can opt in or out of. It's a necessity. You go and you read White America, a lot of people of color America, and they talk about, I have 1 million saved and it's not enough. We're never going to get anywhere near there. But that's what America costs if you don't pay us for the redress, if you don't pay us for the plunder. So I think you have to introduce them to the urgency. Shout out to Antonio Moore, who's in the chat right now. He introduced us to the data that highlighted what this emergency looks like and how we're not going to be able to afford American life in the country that we built. You have to introduce them to that.
Thank you very much. And that goes to our next question. Can allies sign up at joinados.com?
Of course. We believe in solidarity. We just believe that there are terms of solidarity. And one of the terms of solidarity is, hey, we have a transformative Black agenda. But one of the terms of that solidarity is that you sign on to reparations, right? And you understand that a debt is owed to us. So we're not excluding anyone. We're not saying you can't be here, right? We're not saying that you can't be a part of what we're building. We're just saying, listen, we have some very specific kind of asks here, and you have to sign on to those as well. So we're not excluding anyone. We invite everyone, hey, come on, be a part of what we're building. But you can't be a part of what we're building and say, well, I don't know if reparations in America goes just to ADOS. That's a cross. That's a line in the sand for us. But we always welcome them.
Thank you so much.
No problem, fam.
Hey, Yvette.
Hey, Zeta.
Okay, so my questions came from the survey. And my first question is, how will ADOS address public perception of reparations, especially the average Black family's perception of reparations?
Well, I think, it's interesting because we're going to get to some of the Harvard stuff, not right now. We're going to get to it later. But I think what has to happen, it has to start in your house, right? In terms of not viewing this as a handout. This is not only a payment, right? For actually what we did, right? What do you think, Zeta? Do you think this is just a payment for is it a payment for Jim Crow? Is it just a payment for slavery? What do you think about it? Because I would invite you to have a conversation too.
Yeah, I think I agree. It starts in the house. And I think you hit the nail on the head, because it's not just about slavery, though. It's not just about slave labor. It's about a mental, emotional, economic, familial structure, education. The ability to even exist without being bottom caste in this country was stolen from us. So I think when we start to understand what reparations means and why we need it, we can connect those our Black families and our ADOS families back to what reparations really mean. It's the repairing of something that was stolen from us generationally. It was a pass down that was taken away from us. We never had the opportunity to make it a realization.
And that's what you have to drive down to everybody, right? It's that this is not a handout. This is not the government giving us something. Government's never really given us anything. Even when you talk about welfare, that's class-based, and it goes to the suburbs too. So it's not even really class-based. They find a way to give a bunch of money to suburbs. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about right now is you stole something, and in order for us to survive in America, you got to give it back. You got to give it back. And you have to pay that with interest. It doesn't have to just happen just in this generation. I believe, unlike a lot of other people, in a multi-generational framework for reparations. So I'm not saying you spend it all right now, but what I'm saying is that we have to have a plan for redress, and that's what has to happen. And so I think you have to make that case to them. Listen, and you can compare it to other communities. Other communities have gotten redress. Nobody said anything about Guam, right? When they got that, nobody said like you all are begging. It's only when it comes to us. Nobody says anything about the Holocaust, and I believe that the Jewish community should have gotten that money. And not only the Holocaust survivors, but the heirs as well. Kudos to you. You deserve it. You were victimized. You deserve it. We deserve it too. And so you have to say, listen, what is the difference here? When all these other communities get victimized, and we support them, we try to find solidarity with everybody. And nobody finds solidarity with us and says, you know what, you support, you deserve this too. You are a plundered group and you deserve this. So I think you have to find a way to make that plain.
Thanks, Yvette. Thanks for that. It's a really good explanation. This is my next question. How can we better combat disinformation campaigns being waged against us by people with bigger platforms and a larger reach?
Well, I think one of the first things we can do is not become something that gives firepower to the disinformation campaign. Because we talk about Harvard, but it's not just Harvard. We have a bunch of influencers, academics, etc., who just love to say negative things about ADOS. Don't play into that. Don't say something that can be deemed as xenophobic. Don't say something that can be deemed as aggressively divisive in a way that's not productive, right? Divisive is fine if we're talking about divisive in terms of I stand on reparations, right? But don't say anything like that, and don't give them any firepower. Don't do that, because that's something that we kind of have to stand on too, that we don't stand on. We can't give anybody, listen, we have enough bullets and we have enough firepower coming at us. We don't need to give anybody ammo. That's something we absolutely do not need to do. So I think the first step in doing what you just said, and what you did, the question that you just asked is, listen, don't give anybody ammunition to come against us. Be very careful in terms of how you use your social media, your Twitter, your Facebook, right? Be very careful about your Instagram. Don't paint us in a light, because that's what they're looking for.
Discipline is key, right?
Yeah, influencers are looking for a way to just be like, oh, see, I told you all about these ADOS people. They ain't right. They're just trying to do X, Y, Z. No, that's not the case. We don't know who these people are. These people are IP addressed to me, right?
Right.
So I don't know who these people are, because Twitter hasn't done a good job of kind of ferreting out the bots from the real people. That's their job. They're $1 billion companies, not my job, Jack. Right. So what I would say is that we have to maintain a discipline as a group. You know, no group ever got free or liberated or got their goal met by being undisciplined. Just know that. And so what we have to do in terms of, I believe in doing what we have to do as a group, we have to be a disciplined group and make sure that we are not adding fire to the fodder. That's what we have to do. We can't control what they do, but we can absolutely control what we do.
I agree, Yvette. And just to add on to what you were saying, I think we have to understand it's not a matter of, as far as institutions or anything bigger than us pushing down because of what we're advocating for, it's not a matter of why, it's a matter of when. So we have to be strategic in how we move. It has to be we have to be planners, and that's what ADOS.org is bringing, because we understand once we have an education on the fact that our ancestors were the builders of this country, that they built the power and the wealth, and now that power and that wealth is being used to keep us bottom caste. And so when you understand what the goal is, I think it's easier for us to be more prepared.
Well said, Zita.
Good. Bravo, Zita. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zita. So I'll take over for the next couple of questions. How you doing, Yvette?
I'm doing good as always.
Great.
How you doing?
So first question for you. How do we get more people involved in the movement and motivate them to be actively engaged, not just online engaged, not just liking pictures, but actively engaged in this struggle for reparations in the Black agenda?
That's a hard one. Because movements are hard. And one of the things that people have to understand is movement work isn't just, that's part of it, but it's not just being outside with a bullhorn, right? It's all the movement that we all do inside of our meetings, inside of our work. And so people have to be comfortable with that. And so I think what we have to do is just engage people on their level. One thing I tell people all the time is like, look, you're just planting a seed.
Right.
You don't know if that seed is going to take root. You're not responsible for whether or not that seed takes root. And you should not feel bad or somehow less than because that seed did not take root. You go and you tell them, listen, this is ADOS. This is the movement. This is why the movement is important. And this is why it's important to you and your family, not just generally, because people respond to their own needs more than they respond to justice.
Right.
People are very selfish in terms of how they respond. You tell them specifically how it relates to them and how it benefits them. You plant that seed, you water that seed occasionally, and you walk off. But you don't feel any kind of way, right, internally. Because what happens to a lot of people who are activists and different things is that they start to feel away, like, I'm not, I just feel like downtrodden because people aren't responding to me. That's not your job, right?
Right.
That is the job of the people, and that is not your job. You shouldn't feel bad about that. Plant the seed, occasionally water the seed, and then move on. You can't control the outcome of whether that seed becomes a fruit or plant or whatever. You just can't do it. But you can engage, and you should not stop engaging because some people or the majority of people just don't see where you're coming from.
Right.
I want people to engage in their workplace, in their family, everywhere they are. Just engage people and say, you know, we're owed this, and let me tell you why. And you know why you should be proud of being a part of this community. Mm-hmm. We have survived 400 years in the most racist, country in the world, the most mechanized racism. We should be proud of who we are. And guess what? We're owed a debt. Keep saying it until they come to terms with it, and make it feel like community, because we should be a community to one another. We shouldn't be just something where we just kind of talk to each other in America. No, we're a specific group with a specific kind of culture and a specific legacy in this country, and we have to become family to each other. And I think this is a part of doing that.
And I think sharing the data is key too, right? So you pass off the information, you pass off the links, whatever it takes.
Exactly.
And let them read it for themselves. And sometimes it may not happen right away. They may come back later and say, oh, you know that thing I read or that thing you shared with me 6 months ago? That actually makes sense now in my own life.
You know what?
You plant it, you let it grow.
Yep, that happened to me with Obama. People came to me and said, you know what, Yvette, I used to love Obama, and you said, and I called you a dirty wet dog because you said what you said about Obama. But I apologize because I realized that you was right, and he's the dirty wet dog. And so what happens is people take time, right? Sometimes people take time to come around. Just send them, because the data only came around recently. Antonio Moore sent out to the Federal Reserve to get some data because they weren't really even reporting it like they should have been. Right. And so we didn't have it. They were trying to hide how bottom caste we were, right? So now that we have it, send the data out to the people who are important to you, and don't feel any kind of way. The fact that they might not, you send a message, they didn't send anything back. Don't be like, well, I ain't gonna send nothing else to them. They got an attitude. No, it's just a matter. It's just a matter. It's just a matter of they're caught up in a certain mindset, and it takes a while to come out of that mindset. People who trashed me during the Obama administration because I was basically just saying that we need a Black agenda. I wasn't even really opposing Obama necessarily. I was saying he needs to come forth with a Black agenda. A lot of those people came forth later and said, you know what, Yvette, you were right. I just couldn't see it at the time. So just understand that people who can't see it now, they might be able to see it later and have some compassion. Have some compassion for those folks. Understand that they don't know what you know. And they're going to take some time to get there. They're family, though. Just keep that in mind. As you deal with them,
everything.
Yeah, they family. They come to the cookout with the bedroom shoes on. They family, though. We love them. They're our people. And they got wisdom of their own. It's just not this wisdom.
Right.
They have a different set of wisdom. It might be on any set of topics, right? But it's just not this set of wisdom that we have. So just kind of, you have to build yourself up in a way that's sympathetic, and you have to have a love for your people to do this work. That's the only way it works.
Yeah.
The love is the key that keeps us all going. The love of our people keeps us all going and motivated. We spend hours and hours and hours on a daily basis doing this work.
Yeah.
So they don't.
So 1% on love.
Okay, so my next and final question is that, and this is a really good one. How do we maintain specificity for ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, and foster solidarity with other groups, folks who we would like to be our allies at some point?
Well, you know what I like to do? I like to kind of explain to allies and potential allies, like why we're owed reparations. And in terms of Black allies specifically, I like to talk to them about our transformative Black agenda in terms of how they benefit, because when they come here, there is a certain cost. It's not our cost because it's not an inherited cost, but there is a cost of quote unquote Blackness, right? But with everybody else, I say this is kind of like a contract. What do you believe in, right? So, okay, whether you people of color, whether you're Mexican, whatever the case may be, wonderful. Okay, what do you believe strongly in? And what do I believe in? We have to kind of engage this like a contract. If I believe in this and you believe in this, if I believe in X and you believe in Y, we have to come together and say, okay, I can do this if you can do this. The ADOS Foundation can do this, but you have to do this, right? There has to be an exchange. And I think we can engage with Black allies who are Black immigrants, or who are Black Americans, who are descendants, of people who immigrate to this country. We can engage them on a different level because they benefit from everything that we're doing. With other groups, though, we have to say, listen, this is a contract. I'm going to help you if you help me. That's just the way it is. Now, if you feel the way you feel about what we are and what we should be, wonderful, great. If not, this is a contract. This is what I'm going to do on your behalf, and this is what you're going to do on my behalf. And I think too long in terms of our movement work, what we've done is say, listen, I'm just going to do what's morally right. Don't matter none about whether or not I get anything from you or whether or not we have an exchange. I'm going to do what I think is right. And I think where we've gotten now shows that that's problematic. We have to engage politics like politics. This is a political arena. This is not a spiritual arena. It's not your church. This is not anywhere else. This is a political arena, and we have to engage it in that way.
Even if we are as specific as we need to be, history has shown us that everything that we have gotten as ADOS people, as Black people, has benefited everyone anyway.
Right.
So it helps, it benefits, it makes sense for them to support us because we've always supported them indirectly regardless, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, if you it makes sense for everybody, quote unquote, brown to support us, because the only reason that you're here is because of our freedom struggle.
Right.
Yes.
It is insane that you are a Black or brown person, quote unquote, and not supporting what we're doing, because you're only here because of the freedom struggle, the blood that we shed. How are you not supporting us right now? But we have not had organizations, Black leadership to say, hey, you all owe us everything. Because of what we did and what we sacrificed. We have not held them to account. You're here because of what we did.
And we haven't heard that is we haven't taught the truth of the history in this country, right?
Right.
So firstly, just with the 14th Amendment. So many folks are able to come here, be born here, and you're automatically American through us, right? Through our history here, through our fight for freedom.
Not just history. When people see you, they see when they say African American or Black American, they see us.
Yeah.
Right.
So they initially, when they see you, Kofi Annan said that I'm not a descendant of a slave. I'm not Black American in that way. I'm not Negro in that way. But that's what they saw, and that's why you were allowed here. Oh, that's a Negro. That's a descendant of a slave, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's why you're here. That's why you can kind of integrate into all these communities, and people don't even see you really as foreign because we're here already. to kind of pave the way for you. And I think there does have to be, in terms of our exchange as well, there has to be more appreciation of that and what we did, and then what we can do for each other. I'm not in opposition to solidarity, but solidarity is a give and take. It's not you telling me what to do.
Right. And you
not you just reaping the benefits from our struggle. Is you also put in some sweat as well.
Yeah.
Well, and it reminds me of, it's like an analogy would be if we invited everybody out to this table to eat in this restaurant, everybody ate, got full, and then we were left with the bill. Right. And it's like, then when we say, okay, we're going to stand up and say, no, hey, everybody pay your share of this bill. Then everybody says, stop complaining. Look, we can pay the bill. We have money. Why don't you? Right. You know what I mean? But we've been the ones paying the cost the whole time. So yeah, I think it's okay to stand on our square and say, no, this is specifically for us. And we have some things you can be included in, but also here's that exchange again. Like you said, Yvette, I think that's a really important part, not being scared to say, I give, you give, you know what I mean? Not one way.
I give, you give. And listen, we've already given a lot, and we're not saying we won't give more, but we gave a lot. You hear because we gave a lot, right? Yeah. And so I think there has to be some kind of appreciation for what we've already given. There just has to be. We've sacrificed a lot. And so we're not telling anybody they're less than. We would never do that. That's not who we are as a people. But I think people have to understand who we are and understand, listen, if I'm going to engage ADOS, I need to be willing to give. I need to be willing to say I'm pro reparations and fight for that in terms of my advocacy. And so when you come into the movement, you have to understand we love you. We want you to be here, but we have a specific reparations agenda, and we have a specific transformative agenda that we need you to be a part of, and we need to be included in and fight for. That's it.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. So we talked about that, but now I think we need to go to some other stuff that really talks to the origins of the movement, since people had so many questions about that, so many issues.
Nearly a decade ago, the economist Thomas Piketty warned of a new age of disadvantage on the horizon. The future, he wrote, could hold in store a new world of inequality, more extreme than any that preceded it. The main drivers of that great imbalance? Wealth and inheritance. So where do the American descendants of slavery, a group that was made into a wealthless caste, fit into that future? We weren't meant to. For ADOS, to again quote Piketty, the past devours the future. Unless you start uniting the victims of that past, revealing to them the urgency of the present and the need to devote every minute of it to the cause of repairing the damage done specifically to their group. The ADOS movement was conceived for exactly this purpose, to forge a different future for our people. And from that undertaking now grows the organizational apparatus we need in order to realize that future. One in which we are not swallowed whole, but made whole. To start, let's explore the history of the movement.
Hey fam, we had to do this because people said, I don't know where y'all came from. Y'all came out of nowhere. And white people is talking about y'all being bots. I'm just saying, keep it honest. And I think we have to kind of go all the way back. So rest in peace to Gloria Richardson. That she has been my hero. And for those of you all who followed me for a long time, you know that she was my hero. You know her image was on my Twitter, my Facebook. You all know that. Trace me all the way back to 2010, the Huffington Post article. Right? When I said Obama's problem is he's not African American. I didn't have the language for ADOS yet. I said he's not African American. What I was saying and what Miss Richardson was saying, rest in peace, were the same. She said he's black, but he doesn't have the life, the ADOS life of Jim Crow growing up, Chicago, Atlanta, everywhere. He don't have that. He don't have that, and so he's not going to be that. She said he's a nice man, but nice men don't become good presidents. I heard her say that. And for me, her saying that was like, the only way I can describe it, it was like a signal to keep going. Like, keep going, Yvette. You're right. Like, the stuff you've been on so far, you're right. You're not wrong. You're right. That's what that was saying to me. That was like 2013. My article was like 2010 about Obama and not African American. Black, yes, but not African American. So during that same time, we had the advent, we had Antonio Moore come with us with all the data, which was like legs to a table. This is the data. This is the thing that says that we must have reparations. Thomas Piketty during that same time, because our origin story doesn't begin with any other professor. It begins with Thomas Piketty. Professor Thomas Piketty, Dr. Thomas Piketty said, listen, you're not going to be able to make up this wealth. You can't make up this wealth with work. That's not what's happening, especially not in a slaveocracy. You're not making that up. This is the height of income inequality. You have no wealth, you're not going to survive. That's what he said. Right? And so he laid, if you're looking for a professor who laid the foundation for this movement, that professor was actually Thomas Piketty, nobody else. Because he let us know that there's no other way to do this other than reparations. It doesn't happen any other way other than reparations. Because the wealth has already been made and has been locked in. And so when you're thinking about that, right? And we had the Angela Project. Shout out to Dr. Cosby in Louisville. First slave off the ship. We had that, and we were talking about reparations and everything. The Angela Project predated the 1619 Project. We came first. We did it first, and we did it better. Right? That's what happened. Like, I don't think people understand, and that's why we're here having this conversation today. That's why we're here, is because people don't understand exactly what we're saying. We're saying that we did it first, we did it better, and we're still going to do it. Now, understand then, around the same time, y'all can bring this up. This is enter Kamala Harris. Let's just talk about it. Hey, Patrick, how you doing? Unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing? You're muted as well.
I know, I'm good. I'm just shaking my head good. So I wanted to know, because around that time that I just talked to you, we got an audience, right? So when we go down through that, we actually got people to engage and say, oh my God, they right. They saying this, they saying what is right. It makes sense to me. So I wanted to talk to you about, in terms of getting that audience, like what brought you here to like ADOS?
Well, I think it was the first episode that I saw from you was in 2017. And the title was Jesse Williams' divorce, Obama's 400,000 Wall Street payday. And the part that really captured me was why striving is bad for your health.
Oh, yeah. It's unhealthy.
And that story of Mr. Thomas, who was a software engineer, he received 2 offers, one from Apple, one from Uber.
Okay.
And he chose to go to Uber, and the company, and the culture at the company broke him down over a 6-month period, to the point that one morning his wife found him in the car, and she was talking to him, and then she realized that he had unfortunately committed suicide. And that that story really stuck with me, and it stuck with me because you talked about how he did everything right.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything that
Mm.
was wrong. He went to school, he got a good job, but unfortunately for many of us, we wrap ourselves and our identity in what others tell us we need to do for our future. And what you were adamant about in that show was that we need to decide for ourselves what our future looks like. And we cannot put our identity in things that we do not own. And unfortunately, he didn't own shares. He did not own stock in the company. He was an engineer. And I remember you had said that maybe it would be better if for the toxicity of that environment, if he would have chosen maybe a smaller company that was a better
Mm.
fit. And I think one thing you talked about that I really liked is that you not only just talked about the company, but you talked about the culture of the decisions that a company makes, not just in their practices with their employees, but what they do inside of everything, like their holistic image, and how we have to really look at that. And another part that that really captured me was when you said you segued into the story about ESPN losing or letting go of all those employees, and you were saying that almost overnight ESPN had let go of many broadcasters, and I think several of them were African American or Black American. And what stuck out with me is that you said they were at the top of their game and they were let go. And the fact that you were saying that you then connected that to the need for government, because with government, government can step in and say, you cannot fire them. Or it was said later that like the FCC could come in and say that, we're going to not allow you to have a license or something to that sort if you disproportionately let go of Black Americans, if you have too many Black Americans that are let go, or if you're not hiring enough Black Americans. And so we need that as our last resort. That is our last resort. We need the government to step in. Because we also don't have the social capital that others have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think your ability, which connected me to Antonio Moore, and the ability to connect the data with the lived experience, and also like breaking it down to show how the data and the stories are not just the stories there, but they also connect with the literature, and bringing it all together and packaging it nicely really led me to say, like, okay, I binge watched the previous episodes. I then sent it to my family, sent it to my friends, and I was subscribed to the listserv to receive the newsletter. I did all of those things, and I was encouraging everyone else to follow as well, because there was a level of information and a way in which it was connected that I had not seen in recent memory.
Well, let me ask you a question, Patrick. Did it hit you at all personally?
Absolutely. At that time, my background is I'm a chemist by training. Okay. I had recently finished graduate school, and I was contemplating where I wanted to go with my career. And I had to make a decision that was best for me to move along different paths that were best for me in my future. And I think that story continues to hit me because of the fact that I have to check myself to make sure that my identity is not wrapped up in a profession or in an idea or a concept that I don't necessarily own, that I am mainly just working there. And so I need to live a good life, live a healthy life, and make sure that holistically I I don't push myself to the point that I get to the point where I may die of hard work, because many people have died of hard work.
Yeah. People tell you to work hard. People don't tell you people fall out, slap dead on the floor of hard work.
Right.
And I think what you kind of get at there is, the story I showed to everybody and we talked about was that this man has committed suicide. And from every metric, it seemed like he felt like he was on an upswing until he's not. Right. And that's one thing that happens with depression. It happens with suicide. I cannot tell anybody here how many notes I have gotten from people who said, Yvette, I was on the verge of suicide until I saw your show. And there's a reason for that, because what I told them, like, this is America, and America has done this intentionally to you, and it is not your fault. So there's no need for you to have a bunch of internalized hate or self-blame. This is not your fault. And so one of the things that I need everybody to even understand about the story that you just shared, about the show that you watched, is that, listen, yes, it's not your fault. But now that you know it's not your fault, and now that you know somebody else was doing this intentionally, this is the building up of America. This is the construction and the architecture of this country. What are you going to do about it? And so that's the conversation that we were having when we got to Kamala Harris. It wasn't anything about Kamala Harris not being Black. We were having that conversation of, listen, we're going to be an agenda-driven people, Kamala, and what are you going to give us in terms of a Black agenda? And she had an answer. Kamala Harris, I'm not going to do, you see the clip, I'm not going to do anything special for Black. I'm not going to do anything specifically for Black people. No. Well, no other group accepts that as the answer, especially not the final answer. And so what we were saying to Kamala was never, you're not Black. No. We're not concerned about melanin or where you come from. We never said you were not Black. We said you had not lived an ADOS life, right? And so even with ADOS politicians, generally, that's what we need to do. But with you especially, we said, listen, we have to have an agenda, Kamala. What is your agenda? And she said, no. And so we said, this is going to be problematic, that she doesn't have an agenda. And so we started navigating in a way, for those who need the history, to demand for her and Biden and everybody else was in the field, but her too, because she was talking a lot, to give us an agenda. And that didn't happen. And then what happened next is there were a lot of gatekeepers who came out and said, we're going to protect Kamala at all costs. You all remember that period. One of the ones who came out first was Joy Reid. Joy Reid came out with Digital Sister, what a name, and said that ADOS are bots. They are not human people. We were showing pictures and videos and everything. And they were saying, these are not people. These are not human folk. What? What you mean? What you talking about? These are not people. These are just bots. As we're trying to engage her and say, hey, we're not bots. We're actually out for advocacy to improve the quality of life for our own people. That's why we're here. We're not here for that. We're here for something else. They ignored us. And they made false claims. Shout out Perfect Your Purpose. They made false claims against us. Right? That's what they did. And they have not stopped. They have not stopped making false claims against the ADOS movement. That's what they're here for. We're just going to talk about y'all and talk about and defame y'all, because we're here as gatekeepers to make sure Democrats get elected. Now, whether or not the Democratic Party or the Democrats who get elected meet the needs of the Black voters who actually elect them, we don't care about. That's what they're saying to us. And so we push back against that. At that time, we even supported HR 40. You can, if you go back to that time, you see that our activism is actually what created the co-sponsors. Everybody from Jamie on out there, shout out to him. Jamie on, he was out there chasing people down. What's your opinion on HR 40? He was out there doing all of that. And we were saying, sign on to this. Black Lives Matter didn't do that. No other, and Cobra didn't do it. None of these people did. Nobody did that but us. Because we thought we would be able, once we got the co-sponsors on, we would actually be able to get some movement, right? We would actually be able to get some stuff done. We would actually be able to say, hey, this is what reparations is supposed to look like. We actually did the same thing with Marianne Williamson. Right, Antonio had conversations with her about the reparations and what it was supposed to look like. She called into his show. I talked to her. He talked to her, and we got her on a debate stage. How many of y'all donated? Right? How many people were at the ADOS conference when she was there? That was all us. That was not any other organization. For those who are wanting clarifications on how we got here, that was not any other organization. That was ADOS. That's what we do. Marianne Williamson. But then we had Joy Reid. We had everybody come out against us, right? Then we had our conference. Y'all remember the conference? We had the conference. New York Times was there. Had a conversation. Shout out to Farrah Stockman. She had the conversation with us. And we talked about what we were and who we were as a movement, not in terms of what she had thought we were or what she heard we were. We talked about, no, this is who we are as a movement. This is what we represent. Reparations and a transformative Black agenda. That's who we are. Now you transition from that and we get to, everybody remembers it. Let's go through the timeline, because we have to set the timeline out, because people are writing fraudulent origin stories. We get the timeline and we go to Byron Allen, right? Byron Allen is seeking economic inclusion. And Aisha, you were out there in D.C. because it was going to be a Supreme Court, and you were organizing. What was it like on the ground?
It was cold on the ground. But serious, it was cold, but in all seriousness, so a group of us ADOS activists in the DMV area, we got together, not just the DMV area, we also included folks from out of town as well. People were calling us to be included as well. They sent money for help with poster boards and any other sort of souvenirs we wanted to use, or signage we wanted to use that day. So we came out there. I personally got up around 3 o'clock that morning, ended up around 3:30, 4 o'clock, actually getting to the Supreme Court. The line was already down the street and around the corner. I thought I was going to be early. I wasn't the earliest one. And the funny thing is, if folks know DC, people actually, they sleep out overnight to get in line. And people were out there sleeping bags in November, and it was really cold. And 4 o'clock, unfortunately, wasn't early enough for me. So although I waited in line for several hours, I wasn't able to actually get inside the court to hear the hearing. But I stayed out there. I got with the other folks who were part of the rally, and we rallied with them. We had our posters. We got on the bullhorn and saying ADOS slogans, and also sharing information. We had a lot of folks out there who some people are in law school, some people are, just in the area being tourists. They wanted to see a Supreme Court hearing. They didn't know who we were, so we were engaging the people, explaining what ADOS was about and why we were out there and why we wanted to hear what was going on inside the court. And many folks, we actually gave the website information out and different chapter information out if they wanted to join us later. But so initially we got together the night before the actual hearing at my father's museum in Anacostia. That was kind of like our prep rally and our pep rally. And so folks came from all over. We have folks coming down from Illinois, folks came down from New York, Atlanta, people came down from even California and Arizona. People really wanted to get involved and be engaged in this process. They really believed in this fight. So I congratulate and salute all those folks that were out there. It was hundreds of us. And it was kind of like a love fest too. Just when you see another person with your ADOS shirt on and you're like, you're out here too? Like, yeah, I'm out here too. I want to get this work. I believe in it.
I recognize you.
Yeah. You recognize your face from online, or even some people we had just met at the conference like a month earlier. So just depending on the situation, or just voices you hear that call into your show, now you can put a face with the voice. So it felt a lot like a community. It felt a lot like a family reunion, much like the conference did. So it was like a love fest, but then we were there to do some work, right? We wanted to actually, promote a message that, this case is important, that this is not something to sleep on, but that, in 1866, this law basically guaranteed the newly freed slaves the same rights as whites to form contracts, right? So this is a big deal. And so if we had to have this really hard and high test that you have to have a but for in order to prove that race was a factor for you not to get a contract or for you to get fired, that's a high bar, So we wanted to show that we weren't for that. That we wanted it to be a motivational factor, right? And that we wanted to kind of just be in unison and lift our voices, so folks just knew that this isn't just Byron Allen going into a courtroom. It's the whole ADOS movement. It's Black Americans in general saying this is not right. You can't do this to us. You cannot take our rights away. So it was great. So we had two teams, and one team was supposed to go inside. One team's going to be outside. Again, I was part of the inside team that ended up outside. But there were some folks that got in. I just wasn't one of them. I guess I had to spend a night, but it was too cold for that. Yeah, my feet was freezing, but I was out here for the people. Getting people.
For you.
Yeah, and it's just that important. People who know me personally know that I don't like being cold. I don't care if I lived in the Northeast all my life. I don't care. I don't like being cold.
I feel the same way about being hot. I'm with you.
Okay, so yeah, but when it comes to us and when it comes to this fight and this struggle, and the ADOS movement just lit a fire in all of us. So that was the heat that warmed us up to keep us out there. This is that important to be there and to be counted for. And then once the hearing was over, Byron came out, he spoke to the crowd, and I'm very grateful that we were there. He shouted out the ADOS movement. He saw our signs. He's happy that we were there. And again, there were other people out there rallying for other reasons. But our group of people was able to even talk to them. Yeah, they wanted power to stay on TV. And we're like, y'all talking about what now? Power? Come on.
Y'all $2.
But honestly, just with this simple conversation and with this simple discussion on what we were there for, those folks turned over their bullhorn to our group so we can so that our voices could be lifted up. And they started chanting along with us. That's how powerful this message is. And even when you just when you're clear and concise with your messaging, and when it's the truth, your soul knows that, right? So you don't need to be convinced about anything. When it's the truth, when you talk about the data, when you're talking about what's going on, and not just your world, but in ADOS world specifically, that hits home. You may be doing okay, right? But you have a cousin that's on Section 8. You have a sister that's on PA, public assistance. Something is happening in your world somewhere, so that even if you think you're good, you realize that you're not that good. And then
let me stay there for a second. Because that's one of the things that happened in terms of the ADOS movement. So everybody would say, well, there are some people who are all right, right? And there are some people who got money. What we found out is that even if you got money, you got somebody over here, cousin Leroy, cousin Keisha, right? Who it's not supposed to be this way. And it's not their fault. We're not blaming them.
Right.
We're saying because of what America did to them, they become an albatross around your neck. Right. Because there's no economic inclusion, and that was the key to Byron Allen's thing. There is no economic inclusion. They can lock us out of this, and he was saying we're locked out if we don't get this stuff done. We're locked out. But he tried the Supreme Court thing. Now he's trying legislation, but we're locked out. That's what he was saying. And so, one of the things I'm wondering when you were talking to people at the Supreme Court and outside, do people understand what it means to be locked out and have an albatross of people? If you make $10 million today, everybody wants you to buy a car, buy a refrigerator, pay off this debt. I'm going to be in court on Monday. I need an attorney. Are people starting to understand that?
I think it's a mixed bag, right? So I have a girlfriend, for example, who has a husband, and she makes a great salary, right? She makes 6 figures. She does great salary-wise. And he's a blue-collar guy. He makes less than her. but she has a lot of school debt, right? So and I mean like in the hundreds of thousands of debt, thousands of dollars of debt. So she thinks she's in a better position than him because she has a higher salary. But I'm like, but wealth-wise, you're in the negative because of your graduate degree and undergraduate degree. And he would be great without you wealth-wise.
Yeah.
But not understanding that wealth and income are two different things. And so you put him in the negative wealth-wise because of all the years of your school debt. So she thinks she's doing great and everything is fine. But I'm like, when you look at the bigger picture, when you're comparing yourselves to the white American group, right? Your wealth is way, way far below theirs. And so someone like that, you would have to break it down to them just like that for them to really get it. Because like I said, income-wise, she thinks she's doing awesome. But then when you add up the totality of what they have, they're in the negative because of her graduate degrees and her undergraduate degrees. So I would say the average person doesn't get that. They think because they can, like you always say, they think because they can buy an iPhone or they can, maybe afford a nice pair of shoes or sneakers that they're doing great. But because we're so segregated as a society and we're so far away from people who have real wealth and real money that we don't even know what it looks like. We think having a freaking phone means that you have something, right? And it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that you have the basics that any American has to have just to live. And some of us don't even have that. How many of us are unbanked or underbanked, right? So those basic things that make us American, many of us don't even have those basics. We're going to check cash in places, right? And being charged crazy interest rates. So the people that we spoke to that were at the Supreme Court, they're kind of like not a true good sample size because these are people who are kind of in the know. They're kind of law students. They're educated. If you're out there since 4 o'clock in the morning trying to wait online to the Supreme Court, you're not the average Joe, right? So those folks, it was easier to talk to about that and for them to sort of like see it, not necessarily get it, but to kind of see it. But I think the average person that we would talk to just meeting in the corner where I live at in Northeast DC, they would think they're doing fine. They would think they're doing fine.
Absolutely. And I think you hit on something when you talk about your friend, because one of the things that we did in terms of the data was to count the cost, right? Everybody, and I'm not talking about just the series Soul Food. I brought that up before, right? But also the movie. Everybody remember when Terry got that knife and said F the family, right? For another reason.
Right.
Yeah, but she meant F the whole family. She didn't just meant the woman who did whatever with her husband. She was saying like F this family because
I'm tired. Yeah,
I'm tired. I went to school. I got all this debt, and everybody's telling me to pay the tax on this, pay the money on this. You got to pay for this. You an attorney. Nobody counted her debt. Yeah. And that's the thing with your friend. That's the thing with everybody. Everybody says, well, I make, I got a master's degree and I make 85. If you count your debt, you're still in the negative. And I think in terms of how we have the conversation with other people and saying why you should be a part of the ADOS movement, when we talk about college grads, right? We have a different conversation with people who didn't go to college, different conversation with people who didn't graduate high school. We got a different conversation. But for those of you who be like, girl, I'm doing good. I was at brunch and I had salmon. Count your debt. You're not counting the debt. You're just paying that monthly or whatever. The debt is still there. Right. Even if you're not counting it, that debt is still there. And I think that's something that we push people to do because the debt, understand, the debt can prevent you from getting a home. Mm-hmm. The debt can prevent you from doing everything that you want to do in your life. It's not just over there by itself. It has consequences in your life in terms of your credit and everything else.
And just real life consequences. How many people, we see articles all the time, how many people like they're postponing their marriages, they're postponing having children, all because they have so much debt they can't get homes, the newer generation, the younger generation. So it's a real thing. And so that's just one group, like the educated group. But then obviously, like you said, we have to reach people on different levels as well. And I think even some of those folks, right, because they would give you answers like, I have a lot of love in my house. So that's their wealth, right? Yeah. So just not even understanding that you shouldn't live the way you necessarily live. You are an American. You should live an American life so you could, and your people earn those fruits and you should be able to benefit from that.
And you should inherit that. And so what they don't understand is that we inherit the poverty of slavery and that accrued disadvantage, whereas everybody else inherits the wealth of that. One of the things that I always say to people is, I never really understood how much money and wealth and inheritance other people had until you go out. Yeah. And if you go out to eat, when you watch some of these other groups, right, especially white America, they're not thinking about the check. I don't know if you've gone out with your friends. Well, how much is it? $10 for a martini. I don't understand why I make one at the house, but you're not at the house. And so, like, they're not like I started to have to really pay attention to people to understand. Okay, this is different life. This is not just more debt, right? You know, this is not just more debt. This is a different life. And we are living inherited poverty. I saw someone, a professor, say the past is not still alive. It has echoes. And I would say differently. The past is living and breathing, because that's the reason why you are behaving in that restaurant and checking the tab and looking at whatever and not being able to just freely enjoy your life. And that other person over there who doesn't come from what you come from is just having the best life ever, pouring wine down his friend's mouth. He don't care how much the bottle is. It's in the account, child.
And leaving a good tip.
Yes, that's what it is. And I think when we talk about the origin story of this movement, people have to understand that this is so much a part of the origin story. So much a part of the origin story is helping people to count the cost. The 1619 Project didn't do that. The Angela Project did that. And our work with that helped people do that. A lot of people have caught on and said, hey, we're going to run with this thing. But this thing is our thing. And I think when we talk about that, we have to help people understand that there's a cost to what you come from. Because we feel like we can kind of divorce ourselves from our mama, our daddy, our granddaddy, because of what my daddy did. My daddy was a factory worker. He left home. He had a very hard life, but he was able to work in a factory. And everybody says, well, I can do the same thing. You're not in that moment. We help people understand timing. And the timing means that you're in a different moment and a different time. But what did happen is that this is what helped us catch on. So when we went mainstream, this is what did it.
Yeah.
So everybody knows, well, everybody doesn't know. That's why we're doing this. So we went mainstream. We had me on the Kamal Bell show, which was interesting because one of the only ways that he was able to actually kind of do that show, and he told me, he said, they didn't really kind of want you here. And I said, listen, I had the Klan. I interviewed the KKK. How are you going to say I can interview the KKK, but I can't interview my own people? It doesn't make sense to me. So shout out to him for doing that, right? We had a deal, and he had people say, listen, he said, listen, people have told me that they want to be a part of a reparations show, but they don't want to be a part of it if Yvette Carnell is going to be there, right? And they're going to leave. And so we know from that we've had an impact for people to say, listen, I want to be a part of what you're doing, Kamal, but I don't want to be a part of it if she's going to be there. Nicole Hannah-Jones was there. And she said she was going to buy Gucci bags, right? And it's fine for people to buy Gucci bags, or it's fine. It's legitimate to do that. And I think when we talk about ADOS going mainstream, I think one of the things that we have to kind of understand is the importance of this movement in saying, listen, this reparations is not for a Gucci bag. This is to plant a seed so that your seed and your seed and your seed can live off of that seed. So you don't eat the seed, you eat the fruit. You do not eat the seed, you eat the fruit. And so what we tried to make plain in that discussion, and in terms of everything that we talked about, in terms of what we're going to talk about later, in terms of Harvard, we tried to make plain, listen, we are not suppressing any kind of vote. We are voter expression. The perversion of democracy is for America to tell us that we can build this country and not get anything for it. We're not going to give you anything for what you built. We're not going to pay the redress. And when you vote, we're not going to give you anything that you voted for. We don't care about your agenda. We don't care. And so that's what I tried to express to Kamal, is that we were a voter expression group. Not oppression. We are expressing our vote. We're saying we want X, Y, and Z, and you should respond to us as voters. That's what we said. That's exactly what we said. And that moment in terms of what happened there, in terms of what happened. We had I had another ABC interview, and he was actually Nigerian American, and he got it immediately. And what we saw during that period is we're going to have to organize. We're going to have to form an org. We're going to have to form an organization of people to rally around and build around what we're doing, right? Because we had the ABC interview, we had the Kamal Bell interview, and we were expressing ourselves, but people were taking us out of context, and we didn't have an organization to actually implement and organize around what we were organizing around. So the organizing of ADOS wasn't to take anything away from anyone. But we have to do the work of movement building. So in November 2020, we formed the ADOS Advocacy Foundation. And then everybody came out. And then everybody came out and had a problem, especially, but not limited to, Harvard. Hey, Paul, what's going on?
Hey, Yvette. It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you too, fam. I wanted to just kind of, have a conversation, with you, because we know how hard, and shout out to you and all the allies, you're a gangster with yours, who have been working on Harvard and who have been working on the Harvard response, right?
Yeah.
And just talk about one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I really want to drive this home because I don't think people understand it, is the importance of this moment, right? I want to. What's the press secretary? Psaki, Jen Psaki, is that her name? Well, she said, for those who don't know, she said the other day, she said, we're going to have to deplatform disinformation campaigns from everywhere. You shouldn't be on Twitter and be on and not be on Facebook. If you get deplatformed one place, you get deplatformed everywhere.
Exactly. Yep. And we see that happening with Harvard, right? I think in terms of like the toolkit that's available to people who want to see the ADOS movement die, the assertion of disinformation is like basically napalm. And in Harvard's Shorenstein Center, the authors of Disinformation Creep have found like a giant ready-to-use flamethrower to try and inflict maximum damage, But I think it's odd that pre-Disinformation Creep, the editorial staff at Misinformation Review had never said a word about ADOS. Literally, not a word about something that has been around for years and, presumably engaging in disinformation. Isn't that odd? I mean, these are people who, are apparently highly credentialed experts, and disinformation is supposed to be like the very air that they breathe. And you're telling me that they just never got around to even mentioning ADOS in a tweet? Not once? Like ADOS.
Which means that who are we misinforming? Because
yeah.
And I want to bring you back in this because this is so interesting to me. These people have never mentioned us. They look like they don't know who we are, and they're part of this board. And for those of who don't know, that's going to be our next thing. We're coming at them. Listen, you have to answer for this.
Yeah.
Right. There's what's the movie where you got to answer to Santito? Y'all go find it. Was it The Godfather or something? I think that's what we have to do is say you have to answer for this because this we've already shown, right, that everything in the Harvard report is erroneous, unsubstantiated, right?
Yeah.
So they haven't even addressed it though.
No.
They refuse to address us. I want you to just speak a little bit about what does that say about what it means to be a bottom caste. I bet if a right-wing organization said something and they would write something, I bet if the Red Roses say something, they would say, why are they just not saying nothing to us?
Yeah. No, and you're right. And we have to go to the editorial board. So what is this now? So we're at this point, it's now 1 month out from the initial call for a retraction. And I think in that time, the authors of Disinformation Creep and the editorial staff at Misinformation Review, they've all made one thing abundantly clear. And that is they are nothing if not like completely united in their commitment to dishonesty and their total disdain for ADOS. They've plugged their ears. They've sealed themselves off from critique by the ADOS community by going on like a block offensive on Twitter and preemptively silencing dissent from activists, which I guess that's a great strategy if you really admire how like a tantrumy toddler would respond to being told that they can't just go around kicking kids on the playground. It's not a great strategy if you have even a distant concern about the actual integrity of your journal. And I think it's certainly worth finding out if the editorial board of Misinformation Review, these are the 50 people who've kind of tied their reputation to this journal, feel the same way. I mean, one might assume that they'd be interested to hear about the sort of climate that their journal is working very hard to create, a climate that is 100% hostile to debate, and which is, by any impartial consideration of the journal's actions, filled with people who are fostering an utterly corrosive set of norms and practices when it comes to ensuring the journal's credibility. Because look, the editorial board, it's true. They have effectively zero pull when it comes to what does or does not appear in the journal prior to publication. When they say that on Twitter, they're being truthful in a spineless sort of way, because ensuring the journal's credibility, that actually is something that the editorial board in its minimal capacity is responsible for. And at the end of the day, either these 50 people care that they are professionally associated with a journal that condones flagrant dishonesty and misinforming the public, or they don't. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, and I'm personally very eager to find out which one it is. And for those that do care, which they obviously should, then we're calling on them to do the only appropriate thing in this situation and collectively advise the editor-in-chief at Misinformation Review to retract Disinformation Creep, issue an apology, and publish the ADOS Advocacy Foundation rebuttal. The editorial board, they can't just sit around and look at what sort of misconduct and nefariousness the authors of Disinformation Creep have carried out. They're they're sitting around kind of affectionately watching children play with their action figures, as if there's no actual consequence or grim implications for a group of self-professed truth defenders to go around blatantly lying to the American public about a grassroots reparations movement, particularly in a moment like right now, where everyone just can't seem to kind of profess enough, these people, I'm sure included, their commitment to racial justice.
Well, and you know what? They blocked us on Twitter. That's the first thing. They blocked us on Twitter preemptively, right? Yeah. They blocked us on Twitter. And we're going to have a live stream about what everybody else can do. And shout out to everybody again who has been active on Twitter and social media and everywhere to get the word out on this. We know who you are. We love y'all. Shout out to y'all. But they blocked us on Twitter. But let me just say one other thing for those who are paying attention. A lot of these people, pay attention to what Biden's press secretary said. Pay attention to some of the people who are on this rebuttal who proclaim themselves as the platform kind of advocates, right? Because what they are saying is that, and check out, this is Joan, I think Donovan's her name. She is basically saying, yeah, I kind of agree that deplatforming may be the way to go. I don't necessarily think it's the best, but it may be the way to go. And what I try to get people to understand, this is serious.
Yeah.
This is a freedom of speech, freedom of oppression, because they don't want, listen, the one thing that they don't want, ADOS is outside of gatekeepers. We don't have gatekeepers. We're not funded by conservative. We're not funded by liberal. We're funded by you. And so we don't have it. We have small donations. And so what they are saying is, listen, we can't have this group thinking for itself. We can't have these ADOS people deciding that they get to decide what happens for their own lives. That's what they're saying.
Yep. No, I think you're right. I think the people at the Shorenstein, listen, I don't think anyone in like the leadership of misinformation review, all of whom are white, have ever thought for a second kind of seriously about ADOS or like the realities of your group's lives in America in 2021. I think that the people at the Shorenstein Center, like Joan Donovan, absolutely salivate over the thought of an extremely repressive social media sphere. And I think their ears just kind of perked up when some folks from Move On came along and presented them with an article that was like sort of testing the waters of how effective it might be to smear ADOS as disinformation in order to kill the movement and give the Democratic Party like an easy excuse to ignore the demands of the movement. It didn't matter whether the content of that article was actually true. It so obviously isn't, but that doesn't matter because they know that nothing in like the liberal media bubble is so reflexively accepted as fact as an accusation of disinformation. And so if the narrative of ADOS being a source of disinformation, even though, you know, it sure seems like that was news to these experts at the Shorenstein Center, can be leveraged to advocate for greater censorship by big tech, then yeah, they're more than happy to volunteer their journal to facilitate that. I mean, it's sort of sick and like galling how they have this journal that they'll just kind of like shamelessly loan out for anyone who feels like saying like anything, apparently, you know, for all
anything I disagree with. And bring that clip back up, fam. Bring that clip back up because something was said very important. That's Joan Donovan again. She said they can deplatform, remove content, ban terms. In short, they can pull the plug on media manipulation campaigns if they take the right actions at the right time. Deplatforming manipulators and hate and hate mongers works. Yeah, but you can determine who's a hate monger.
Yep.
Because I got called a bot. I got called all kinds of stuff that I wasn't. I don't need Joan Donovan deciding who is what. You don't get determining nothing like that. Y'all got this white woman determining who that we're hate mongers. She don't know. She doesn't know anything about us or what we're dealing with. And we're in a space where there's no governmental anything. So we don't have anywhere to go. And I tell people like this is the importance of the rebuttal. If you haven't read the rebuttal, go to adosfoundation.org, read it and share it, right? The importance of getting that rebuttal published is so we can unearth those lies and say, no, you don't get to call us Joan. You don't get to call us misinformation when all we're doing is advocating for a specific group and a specific kind of redress. Hashtag poison ivy, hashtag crimson smear. We need to get that message out because I don't think people understand really honestly that you can be deplatformed.
Yeah.
They can snatch that. What they're trying to do is snatch my Twitter account, snatch your Twitter account, get all of us deplatformed because then the noise goes away. Yeah, we don't have to have those Negroes here advocating for reparations, a transformative Black agenda. We now can have people say vote blue no matter who. Right? Yeah. That's what we want. We don't want you out here advocating for yourselves. We got a bunch of people on TV right now who can speak for you. They academics and journalists, and they can speak for you. They're always going to walk up to a line and never over the line. That's who we have. We have domesticated Negroes who we have hired to speak for you. Why are you speaking for yourself? And so I think what has to happen is we have to honestly have people understand the urgency of this moment. This is not just about, oh, let it go, this is Harvard or whatever. This is about the urgency of the moment. And what do you say about that urgency, Paul?
Okay, so yeah, you know, like I think there's this idea, and well, like I mean, people have said this explicitly, that Harvard has the right to make the claims that it makes, just as ADOS has the right to refute those claims. And so it's like, well, case closed on like retraction, then I guess, it's almost like you're sort of like ridiculous for even thinking it. Of course, like when people say something like that, the suggestion is that both Harvard University and a grassroots movement made up of the country's most historically marginalized people have effectively the same reach out into an American public that is just sort of like, I don't know, like sitting around sort of diligently combing through the infosphere, like free of any kind of like bias of who they ought or like ought not to trust. Like, no, like this is Harvard. And it's just so like offensive to be told that in a country that has left your group holding like a little Fisher-Price microphone, that you can take that and stand next to an institution that has a giant bullhorn that is telling lies about you and expect that when you go to defend yourself, you're going to get like a fair hearing. Like, you won't, obviously. Like a retraction is your only weapon in this fight. And
like I told people all the time, Paul, like what happens is that people can now take this. I saw it online. So ADOS Atlanta is doing some great stuff in terms of a resolution for ADOS. I saw somebody online say, hey, I'm going to send them this Harvard report so that they know that this is a hate group, or they know that these people are not people to be trusted.
Yep.
All the time. I told somebody, I had a speaking engagement a while back, right? Yep. And somebody, and the person who had me come speak and said, hey, but I want to talk to you. I just want to let you know that we received over a dozen calls demanding that you not appear here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what deplatforming looks like.
Right.
And I don't think people understand that they can listen, we're fighting a good fight and we're good fighters.
Yeah.
But if they take us off the battlefield, if they take you off the battlefield, there's nothing that you can do. Right. And I think we all have to understand too, this is a long game. We have to manage expectations. This is our marathon. This is not our sprint. This is our marathon right now. So don't get disenchanted, but you got to be in the game. You got to be inside of what we're doing, and you have to be contributing to it. And we have more strategies that are coming. You just got to stay. You just got to stay present, stay with us. We have more stuff that's coming, right? But in terms of what we need you to do, but we absolutely need you to do it, not just for yourself, for the people in your family, for the people you love, for the people in your life. And so, I need people to understand how important this is. I don't have any problem fighting. I have a problem with you taking me off the battlefield. And it looks to me like that's what's happening. And I'll let you have another word, Paul.
So I think you're exactly right. And like, listen, it's like very hard to sit here and encourage patience to a group of people whom I've personally watched for the past 5 years continually suffer the abuse of a whole class of people whose aspirations, either professionally or socially, are fueled by denigrating ADOS. So it's very hard to sit here and say, hang in there, because every minute that passes in which disinformation creep isn't retracted is a minute too long. But like, I know one thing. I know that Harvard is counting on everyone involved in this fight to quickly become weary of the lift and the stamina that's going to be required in order to compel a retraction from them. But I would say this. I would say let that assumption of theirs fuel you for the long haul ahead. Take the fact of their lowest of low opinions of you. The fact that they feel that they can simply like just run down the clock on your commitment to what you know to be right and what you know to be true. And don't let go of the indignation that should inspire in, I think, anyone who claims to care about what is right. I know I won't ever let it go.
Exactly.
I'll never let go of what the writers of disinformation creep think that they can do, that they can just run around doing all sorts of like devilry everywhere, and then assuming that I and everyone else will eventually just get fatigued, too fatigued to kind of put up a fight, and that we'll just sort of like learn to live with like the smell of all of their bullshit hanging around in the air. Like, I know I won't, and I don't think anyone else should either.
And it's a marathon. It's a marathon. And everybody has to understand that everything that we do is movement work. Regardless of if you're calling, it's still movement work. You know, Gloria Richards, I mentioned recently passed, an icon to me. And, you know, her pushing that gun away. You can say to yourself, well, what happened? He could have stabbed her. He could have shot her. Don't matter. You gotta be on the battlefield. And one thing that you know, it'll be a battle, but we have something for our soldiers. So. So, drum roll, please. Everybody, we have a special announcement. We have said, and we have let everybody know, we will have a conference. We will have our conference. It will be in Louisville. We'll be at the same place, which means that we have limited seating. It is what it is. Get your tickets soon, get your tickets early, all that kind of stuff, right? So you should know that. I'm very excited about it. I hated that we had to miss last year, but COVID pandemic, and it's still kind of with us, but not as it was. So we have to get back into it, and we have to get back into doing the work. ADOSconference.com. Early bird tickets at an early bird price. Let me just say this too. The tickets are more expensive than they were last time. What happened last time was Dr. Cosby, St. Stephen's ended up eating, you know, a large part of that cost because we didn't charge enough for tickets. I'm not going to have him do that or the church do that this time, right? It's just not going to happen. So we had to charge more because we're not going to be in the red for a conference this time around. It just is what it is, folks. We have a special event on day 2 because this is a building conference. This is not just a talking conference. Day 2 is going to be about training. We got to get people trained. We got to get some real boots on the ground and know exactly what they're doing. We got to get them on there, right? So day 2 is going to be all about training and getting us to where we need to be to do exactly what we need to be. It's going to be, I think, what did we say, the 8th and the 9th? Let me know, fam. We're not going to do it the same. The first week is when we usually did it, but we're not going to do that this time because we were competing. The October the 8th and the 9th. That's the conference. October 8th and the 9th. The last time we were competing with the arts festival. So we moved it. We pushed it up another week so that we don't compete with that festival. This time we're going to have food trucks. As opposed to us having the sandwiches, give y'all some variety and things like that you like to have. We're going to have vendors. The early bird tickets are until August the 1st. So those are the early bird tickets. Then the prices go up. We're also, we're going to have some other stuff, but we just want to let everybody know that those are the location, dates, and times. We're going to have speakers and panels. We're going to have all of that kinds of stuff. And so ADOSconference.com. That's where you're going to go to get it. I just want to make sure I ain't missing nothing. But that's where you're going to go to get it, ADOSconference.com. So we're going to have, I don't know how many of y'all were there last time. It was a family reunion. We had a blast. We had fun. We was outside. We still going to have outside stuff. We had a wonderful time. We had speakers. We still going to have the speakers on day 1. Day 2 is training because we got work to do. And so 2 full days though. Remember that. It's 2 full days. Before the last time, the second day was a half day. Remember that? Last time, second day was a half day. This time, no. The second day is going to be a full day of training. So we're going all the way to at least 6 p.m. both days. Do not forget that. And we're going to have some stuff. We're going to get together. Listen, fam. We gotta do what we gotta do. So I want everybody to get their tickets and get ready, right? Get your. If you can't make it, we're gonna have something there for you too. But get your tickets. Get ready for the ADOS conference, the 2021. All right. Everybody should be